Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into something that sounds simple but is honestly a total game changer. We're looking at the power of the pause. You know, that fascinating intersection of neuroscience, relationship psychology, and existential philosophy. Basically, we're unpacking why taking a single breath before you speak might just be your ultimate superpower. In a world that is totally obsessed with instant replies and emotional reflexes, we've kind of forgotten the value of stillness. But, as we're going to see today, reacting is definitely not the same as responding.
And there's this quote by the renowned psychiatrist Viktor Frankl that perfectly hits the nail on the head. He said, "Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." What's so wild about this is that he's identifying this tiny, almost imperceptible gap between reacting and responding. And it turns out it's not just some poetic idea. The source data we're diving into today proves this space is a literal neurological reality. Cultivating that gap, that's your ticket out of chaos.
So, Section 1, the reactive human brain, and why we default to impulse. Let's first look at what happens when we don't utilize that space Frankl talked about.
Without a pause, conversations can get emotionally charged fast. Take a look at this. It's the classic and frankly toxic pursuer-distancer cycle from attachment theory. When stress hits a relationship, one person usually becomes the pursuer, acting out of anxious attachment, becoming demanding, maybe a bit critical. Naturally, the other person becomes the distancer, pulling away to find some emotional breathing room. And here's the absolute trap. The harder the pursuer pushes, the further the distancer runs. Without that ability to just pause and self-regulate, couples get completely locked in this loop. And researchers say it drastically spikes the risk of a relationship failing. To complicate things even more, sometimes our own brain chemistry actually sets us up to be hyperreactive right out of the gate. Have you ever heard of limerence? It's literally a dopamine-driven behavioral addiction to a person. Your brain gets completely hijacked, turning your partner into this addictive, motivational magnet. When you're deeply infatuated, your ventral tegmental area, a part of the midbrain, just lights up. It creates what's called incentive salience, meaning your attention is aggressively, almost magnetically, pulled toward them. When you're flooded with dopamine like that, your impulse control just plummets. You might feel like you absolutely must text them back this exact second. Moving on to Section 2, the science of silence and rewiring the brain's stress response. So how do we actually break that cycle and regulate that intense dopamine rush? Well, we do it by changing how our brain processes information in real time. When we react instantly, the amygdala is running the show. That's your emotional brain. It processes threats in milliseconds, way faster than your conscious brain can even catch up. If it perceives a threat, like say a sharp comment from your partner, it instantly floods your system with adrenaline and cortisol. Boom, you are in full fight or flight mode. But if you take a simple pause, that allows the prefrontal cortex the crucial time it needs to come online. This is your rational brain, the home of empathy, problem-solving, and thoughtful communication. The pause is literally the biological bridge between those two brain regions.
And here is the absolute craziest takeaway from this. You don't need to sit on a mountaintop and meditate for an hour to regain control. Your brain literally only needs a fraction of a second to switch tracks. A few hundred milliseconds, that's it. Research shows that while an impulse originates in the amygdala, that tiny micro-pause gives the prefrontal cortex just enough time to intercept the signal. You are actively, physically shifting your brain from a state of raw emotion to a state of reason. It's a biological hack to instantly lower the emotional temperature of the room.
All right, Section 3, the toolkit, featuring 5 types of pauses. Now that we know why pausing is absolutely crucial biologically, let's look at the specific tools you can use.
We can actually break the pause down into 5 specific, actionable types, each serving a totally unique purpose. First up, we've got the processing pause. That's just taking a quick beat to let new information land before you reply. Second is the emotional pause. You know, when you feel your heart rate spike with anger or defensiveness, you just stop and breathe. Third is the reflective pause, where you ask yourself, wait, what do I actually want out of this conversation before you open your mouth? Fourth is the compassionate pause, which is huge, and we'll look at that in a second. And finally, the fifth is the strategic pause, which is a great tool for leaders or teachers to really emphasize a key point.
Now, zooming in on that fourth one, the compassionate pause. Studies actually show that just using short pauses during active listening makes you appear significantly more empathetic and attentive. It's powerful stuff. Because when someone shares their pain or frustration, our default instinct is usually to jump right in and fix it, right? Or maybe defend ourselves. But just holding silence, that honors their emotion. It shows you're actually listening to comprehend them, not just waiting for your turn to talk. It builds incredible solidarity.
Next up is Section 4, Overcoming Our Mental Prisons. We're getting into ego, love, and philosophy here.
So, the power of the pause isn't just about winning an argument or calming down. It fundamentally changes how we interact with our own minds. Look at this quote from the Buddhist ego text we're examining. Is there no way out of the mind? It's a heavy question. We are constantly overanalyzing, judging ourselves, getting locked into these rigid identities. It creates massive anxiety. To find a way out of that mental prison, we have to leverage the pause to step outside our own thought loops.
The sources break this down into 3 levels of ego. Level 1 is just raw, unfiltered experience. Level 2 is where we usually get hopelessly stuck. It's that endless loop of judging and analyzing the experience. Honestly, it's like a dog chasing its own tail. But pausing, that allows us to bypass all that level 2 judgment and reach level 3. Level 3 is mindful observation. You become the silent observer. You notice your mind judging, but, and here's the kicker, you don't judge the judgment. You just pause, observe, and let it be. It frees up so much mental space to actually connect with the world around you.
And this ties beautifully into Sartre and Beauvoir's concept of authentic love. In existential philosophy, there's this idea of bad faith, where we try to lock ourselves into a rigid identity, and we end up treating our partners like objects meant to just serve our personal narrative. But when we pause and step back from our ego, we escape that trap. We enter what they call an ambiguous union. We stop trying to control the other person, and we actually start mutually comprehending them as a free, independent subject. Authentic love literally requires the space that only a pause can provide.
All right, bringing it all together in Section 5, Building the Pause Habit with a 30-Day Framework.
Understanding the prefrontal cortex and authentic love is awesome, but you have to actually put it into practice. You can't just magically decide, I'm never going to react impulsively again. You have to train the habit. So here's a step-by-step 30-day roadmap. Week 1 is purely awareness, just noticing your triggers and journaling when your amygdala hijacks you. Week 2, you physically inject that micropause by adding 1 deliberate breath before replying. Week 3, you bring in bridging phrases to buy time, like, let me think about that for a second. And by week 4, you're consciously practicing those compassionate pauses, letting others finish entirely before you speak.
If you find yourself really struggling with those micro-pauses in week 2, try this simple breathing anchor. Step 1, inhale for 4 counts. Step 2, exhale for 6 counts. It sounds too easy, right? But this specific physical action activates your parasympathetic nervous system, instantly sending a signal of safety to your body. That longer exhale actively drops your heart rate and physically prevents reactive speech. It literally creates the perfect biological environment for your prefrontal cortex to step up and take over.
Now, a quick heads up on some common pitfalls as you build this habit. You have to remember that a pause is about active engagement and presence. It is absolutely not avoiding the problem or giving your partner the silent treatment. It's really easy to mistake a pause for withdrawal or to overpause and just look totally passive or distant. Just remember, a pause is a temporary bridge, not a brick wall. You always have to circle back and engage with the conversation, just with way more clarity this time. So, I'm going to leave you with a final provocative thought to ponder the next time your amygdala flares up and tries to run the show. We are bombarded by stimuli every single day, but inside that tiny fraction of a second, right there between the trigger and your response, lies your entire capacity for empathy, connection, and rational thought. So next time you feel that urge to react, what will you do with your space? Thanks for diving into this explainer with me today. Go practice the pause, and we'll see you next time.